On the question whether the temple in Jerusalem was either here or here, we have discussed, not in the previous video but in the one before, the potential findings on the three sites being relevant for us. Those sites are the site of Fortress Antonia, allegedly, the Temple Mount, and the Ophel, with the main conclusion that if this is the Temple Mount, then the northern part of the temple, beneath it, pre-Hasmonean structures must hide there under the surface. And if this structure here, what we see on our screen, is Fortress Antonia, we can expect Hasmonean structures to be found in the southwest corner. In this video, I want to discuss the actual findings in and around these three sites. That is, the findings I am aware of, those three sites being Antonia, the Temple Mount, and Ophel. Now, with respect to excavations, two of the three sites are a little bit tense. The site where Fortress Antonia would have been, allegedly, so here on the northwest side, is densely populated, and the Temple Mount, that is a very contested piece of real estate, and digging there might trigger a World War III, so that is not recommended. But the end result is that not much information is available from these sites, as far as I know, from an archaeological perspective. Now, I have read about cedar beams being found on the Temple Mount about 100 years ago in the Alaska Mosque or something. Beams that could be traced back way far into the past, centuries before the Common Era. And I assume that to be true. It is an interesting finding. Very old cedar beams from the Temple Mount. The idea is that these beams once belonged to the temple, and that sounds reasonable. Had it been a few beams, then maybe those beams could have been from other buildings, but quite a lot of such beams, they must have originated from a serious building. And for serious buildings, not many options are available several centuries before the Common Era. So it makes more or less sense. It is a logical conclusion that these beams most likely originate from the temple. Now, my question is, what made them survive the utter destruction of the temple? The whole complex was set on fire, temple, surrounding cloisters, according to Josephus, including its foundation. No traces of fire present on those beams, as far as I know, and from what I've read. No traces at all, and that is unexpected, to say the least. Now, from my perspective, it's rather easy to explain how those beams from the temple were ending up at Fortress Antonia and survived the fire unharmed. The common factor is King Herod and his circular economy and all his ongoing building projects in Jerusalem. Herod initiated the makeover of the temple. He removed it from its foundation. That is what Josephus is telling us. Herod enlarged it. He rebuilt the cloisters, everything. Would he put back the old cedar beams? Well, of course not. New stones, new beams. And what is Herod going to do with all the old beams? Well, the ones that were still okay, he gave them a new purpose, a new destination. Or on one of his other building projects, with Fortress Antonia being a prominent one. For instance, to build the repetitive structures, the barracks for 5,000 soldiers. That would be a perfect destination for still functional cedar beams. The Roman and the Byzantine armies, they stayed there till basically the time the Muslims took over, and those Muslims repurposed the beams for their Alaska mosque, apparently. And that explains the main mystery. Why did those beams survive the destruction? Well, they were inside a Roman camp, which survived the destruction. In fact, it is thinking about it, it is strange that people draw the conclusion based on those beams that the place where those beams are found, was the temple site, because after Herod's makeover, those beams weren't no longer part of the temple, and their survival indicates that the place of finding was a Roman campsite, the site that escaped the destruction. The only site that escaped the destruction, according Josephus. Now we have other items found on the Temple Mount, and those were related to a rather rude removal of surplus material by the Arabs from the site in the context of a recent building project on the Temple Mount. And this excess material was dumped apparently somewhere and is now being thoroughly screened and sifted by the Israelis. Well, the problem with these findings is that it was already filling material before it was removed by the Arabs, and that filling material, when it was being used as such for the first time, might originate from the temple site, but not necessarily so. It is reasonable to assume that it came from close by, from and around the Temple Mount, because it doesn't make sense to bring it from far away. But 250 meters is not far, so basically this filling material could have originated from a circle around this location. Okay. Moreover, thinking about these tiles, those tiles could be from the temple square, which was there allegedly, but if this is Fortress Antonia, then the Roman campsite was here, but on the south side the infrastructure was available for the Roman governor. In fact, here was the palace of the Hasmonean standing, used by Agrippa as well, and most likely that was the residence of the Roman procurator. So in that case, the trial of Jesus took place somewhere here, and believe it or not, the Apostle John informs us that we have a Mosaic floor on that location. Because what is the Apostle John saying in chapter 19, verse 13, that when Pilate therefore heard this saying, he brought Jesus forth and sat down in the judgment seat at a place that is called the pavement, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha. And the words being used there, Lysostoros and Gabbatha, do picture an elevated mosaic floor, according to Wikipedia. So these tiles, well, they could originate from the temple square, if they originated from that structure. But the tiles could be as well originating from the mosaic floor of the Hasmonean palace. So the conclusion is that these findings don't discriminate between this being the temple site or being the Fortress Antonia. Now there are also excavations going on the Ophel side, so basically here. And of course I followed these excavations with interest. Currently remnants from the Byzantine Empire are being removed, but to be honest, I don't expect them to find much beneath it. Maybe they will find something carved into the bedrock, things that were used by the priests in the basement of the temple. As I said in previous video, facilities to store things or for a pre-treatment of the non-consumable parts of the animals, which they had sacrificed. And the item that drew my attention is a pit. Let me put it here. What has been found in the old city is a pit on this location here. In the literature, it is referred to as Pit L145, and it is about 20-25 meters from the temple complex. Now this distance here is relatively small, and that might be related, and that is of course very intriguing. The pit could be related to a topic that is not much talked about, namely the waste stream related to the ongoing sacrificial work that was performed by the priest in the temple. If you think about it, what was going on there in the temple was a business where a following question can be asked: what was the material balance of the process that was going on there? Now, what was going on? That wood and water and animals were entering the temple complex, and what was leaving the complex was smoke and vapor, waste and wastewater, and meat, and probably, on a certain moment, other non-consumable parts of the animal. But especially the waste and the wastewater is an interesting thing, because the water was being supplied by an aqueduct, probably to the Copper Sea here. And when the animals were sacrificed, a lot of things were basically waste, which had to be flushed away with a lot of water. And so this pit might be related to that phenomenon. So there must have been some kind of a sewerage system, and this pit might have something to do with it. It is only 25 meters south of the temple, and it is situated slightly lower with respect to the possible basement of the temple. Now, I am not expecting parts of the infrastructure related to that sewerage system to be found on the Ophel excavation, but on the side of the pit there might be clues that its function has something to do with what's going on north of that pit, and that would be, of course, very interesting. Now anyway, the cedar beams that were found do hint more to the alternative location, so basically to this location. And the rest of the findings aren't giving us much clues, but there is a lot of potential regarding findings. Of course, the finding or non-finding of remnants of Fortress Antonia is very important on the alleged location north of the so-called Temple Mount. 2. The findings or non-findings of a pre-Hasmonean structure on the northern part of the so-called Temple Mount. And 3. The findings of Hasmonean structures on the southwestern quarter of the Temple Mount. Or 4. The connection between the pit and the Ophel site. Those will all be very telling, in my opinion. Now, the next time I will return to what the Bible implies, more precise this time about the possible implication of the prophecy by Jesus about the destruction of the temple. Thank you for listening.